Hi guys, Tracy here with another scrapbooking process video. Today I'm working on my pocket pages again. This period is spanning sometime mid-ish February, kind of picking up from wherever the last pocket page left off. I kind of do it weekly, but not religiously, so I usually do 4 or 3 pages per month. And so I'm just pulling out my kits here. I have 2 kits. They're sort of mixed up at this point. I have an Ellie Studio January pocket page kit, and I also have the Studio Calico January kit here as well, and a few things from I believe it was the November kit that I pulled some items out of as well. And I have a random sheet of Felicity Jane labels that I'm trying to use up too. So I'm trying to work from these supplies before I dip into my stash. I only have one 4x6 card here, so I will be dipping into my stash at some point to try to get some more 4x6s on the page. But first I'll have a look at my 3x4s, and I'm just spreading them all around the page here. I have that bright pop of red with that heart, and so I put that For the Record red card down in the other corner just to kind of give a little bit of balance. There's quite a bit of red. There's some red in my scrap room picture up in the top left-hand corner, and there's some red in the blanket down below the photo below the card with the heart. And so there's kind of lots of red showing up in this page, and I'm just going to spread it around. And then I introduce that really bright blue with that rainbow right beside the For the Record card. That goes over to that really dark blue. So I put another card with dark blue. And now I'm just dipping into my stash. I keep my cards sorted by color, which makes it easy for me to find the colors that I need. I tend to sort my supplies based on how I scrapbook, and so I tend to look for colors. And so almost all of my stuff is stored by color. And so these are a combination of Hip Kit cards, Kelly Perky cards, Studio Calico cards, maybe some random printed off the internet cards. Lots of different things in here. What you won't find is Becky Higgins rounded corner cards, because I have destashed all of those. Now I'm also going to look for some pink 4x6 cards. I didn't realize how many 4x6 cards I would need here, so I'm just picking a couple more out here. And I like to share my entire process, including the shopping my stash part of doing a page. So I just switch the cameras like that. Now, I don't love that. I like the idea of that llama card, but I wish that it was not white, because there's a lot of white-based cards on this side of the page, and I really need a more colorful 4x6 card up there in that photo with me with the light in my studio. So I'm just keeping that in mind. I have a backup plan for that card, that there's that pink grid paper type of card that I just tucked behind it. Now, it looks like I have almost everything so that it has a card behind it. Now, this blue card down in the bottom right-hand corner was meant to balance with that blue card up kind of diagonally to it on the other side, but it's too dark. It's the wrong color of blue. So I went to my scraps looking for that bright, also dark color of blue. See, I'm trying to match it there. That's a better match, that Chamel paper, but it's still not a great match. They're going to be far apart from each other, so it doesn't have to be perfect, but I would really like it to be a brighter blue rather than that dark blue with those dots on it. That's like a textured cardstock from a very long time ago that I was trying to use. Then it occurred to me that Lawn Fawn makes a blue that's very similar to that. It's called Blue Jay. And as you can see, actually, I think the way that my light is kind of reflecting a little bit off of the other page, the card, it's making it look like these are quite different colors, but they're actually quite close together. I think you're just getting a bit of reflection off of the 3x4 card that makes it look a lighter blue than it actually is. But this card is actually quite a good match to that other card. I think it just absorbs more of the light, so it looks darker because it's a cardstock instead of a shiny coated paper. So I trimmed down that card, that 3x4 card, so that it could sit upon the 4x6 blue cardstock. And now this is a picture from Procreate. It's actually, neither of my daughters made that picture, but it was their reference point for learning how to draw hair on Procreate, which is a illustration software for the iPad. And so I'm just talking here about how I want these 4 cards to go together. The 2 pictures of my daughter, well, the 3 pictures of my daughter at a restaurant, and then 1 journaling card. And so I'm playing around here with what I want to do with this. I thought maybe I would do that because that grid paper is basically going to keep all 4 of these cubes together. Not cubes, but you know what I mean. These 4 cells. So the 2 cells of the 4x6 and then the 2 3x4s above it. It's actually 3 pockets that I'm trying to make go together. And in order to do that, what I was originally planning to do was some like heavy, thick outlining around the outside of it. That black paper is really throwing off my camera, but don't worry, it won't last forever. So instead of doing some outlining, I decided to do some thick matting. I thought that this would do a more obvious job of pulling together these 3 cells. So again, the 3 cells are 1 4x6 and 2 3x4. They're all part of the same story, and I just want you to be able to, at a glance, without having to figure it out, know that these 3 go together. So I cut those down so that I can use them as mats. I'm going to have to cut down also the things that go on them. So this photo is going to have to come down a little bit. And because I like the way it's framed, I'm just going to take a little bit off of each of the different corners of it. And when I frame it, I'm going to frame it not all the way around, but only on those 2 outside corners. And I'll do the same but mirrored image here. And then I'm going to cut this one down. I'm just playing around with which sides I'm going to cut. Oh, I need to take a little bit more off of that one. And for balance, I took it off both sides, and see how that now reads as if it were a whole unit. That was what I was going for. So now I'm just going to line up so that the inside corners match up, and then there's a border around the outside corners. Have to trim a little bit of that off. I'll do the same with this, lining it up with the cards above it as well as making it even. I like how that looks. See how your eye is just going to interpret that as all one story? That's what I like to do. I usually do it with outlining, but this time I did it with matting. Now I needed this photo to fit within that, and I'm playing around a little bit with placement here, and I was thinking, do I want it in the center or do I want it off center? And I decided to put it off center, and this was a mistake because now that left me with this awkward little space on the side that I wasn't sure exactly what I would do with, so I thought I'll move it over, but now it left a mark. And it doesn't usually leave a mark, but just this card had like it was just printed on the surface, and it just peeled off really easily. This particular card, I forget which brand it is, but they are delicate, like they rip easily. So even though I like the photo over to the side, what I decided to do was to leave the ripped pieces in place, and then I'll just cover over them with some embellishments. I am trying to use up as many embellishments as possible because I'm thinking that by the time I scrap again next week, the February kits will probably be here, at least one of the 2 kits that I'm subscribed to. Again, that's Ellie's Studio and Studio Calico. And I put that one down too far, so here we go, ripping off another piece of that paper, but oh well, sometimes things don't go as you planned, and that is all right. So there's a little bit of white exposed paper below that gray chipboard, but that's okay. I really like the way this cluster ended up turning out. The red chipboard says A Little Adventure, and then the smaller gray chipboard, it's almost a purple, but it's gray, says Loved This Day. And then I put one of those circle stickers on there too to try to use those up. My journaling says Liv and Maylee went to the fondue restaurant Cacao 70 and enjoyed some time downtown and some delicious fondue. I'm writing that with my Sharpie pen, which is my very favorite journaling pen. I have a couple of favorites, but that's probably my very favorite. I like how black it is, and it writes on almost anything. It's not a slick surface writer, but other than that, it writes on almost anything, and it just feels good, and it's really inky, and I haven't had any problems with it other than losing it for a while. That was my only problem with it. Now, I find these really cluttered pictures to be a little difficult to document. The whole purpose of me taking this was to say, look at how messy my room was this day. And yes, it's very messy. So I'm going to use some labels here to kind of provide a little bit of a space for your eye to rest on this photo. And this really bold red, it's a Martha Stewart sticker. I had to go into my stash to find it. I knew I had it. I went looking for it specifically. And I like how that looks. It gives it, because it's so bold, your eye automatically goes to it. There are 2 other pops of red in the photo from my 2 red bookshelves. What I'm doing here is I'm writing on Project D Stash, but I didn't have enough room to do it, so I pulled it off and used the other half of that ticket, and then I put Project and D Stash on top of one another instead of up below and above, instead of beside each other, I mean. And then you'll see I had a moment of deciding to take that off. It's too centered. I wanted it down further, but I didn't want to fuss with it, so I just left it. Because it's stapled in, it would have been hard to move. I shouldn't have stapled it. I should have glued it down and then looked at it and then stapled it. I want these circle stickers to be all facing the same way because they have a strong vertical line on them. Could have been vertical or horizontal or diagonal or whatever way I wanted it to be, but I decided to go with vertical. So now I'm going to do these 2 cards, and I really like how these 2 cards, although those 2 reds are not exactly the same, it kind of looks like there's this red card is a continuation of that rainbow to its left. See how the 2 reds kind of blend together? They're not exactly the same shade, but they still look pretty good together like that. This layout, I have to say, this spread has lots of errors in it. It didn't come naturally to me this time around. I'm going to make another mistake here. So what I'm doing here is I'm trying to cover up the fact that there was an employee in the mirror, and I would have liked to have just waited a minute. She would have been gone if I had just waited a minute, but I was in a rush, so I just took the photo anyways. And now I'm changing my mind about the size of the photo, and I'm wishing that it was smaller so that I could have a little border of that white around the edges of my photo. And so I'm cutting it by hand, but the chipboard is still on it, so I'm not doing a great job of cutting straight lines. And we all know that it doesn't have to be perfect, but I'm a little bit, making it worse. Every time I try to straighten it out, I make it more crooked. And I felt a little bit like that time that you're cutting your own bangs and you just keep on cutting, and then it's more crooked, and then you cut it more, and then it's still crooked, and then you cut it more. But anyhow, my purpose was to have the white space around the outside edges of that photo, and it worked, but anyhow. Then I just did some messy outlining because I was just fed up with it and decided I just like putting messy outlining on things that I feel are mistakes, and that way it looks like it was a mistake on purpose. In these journaling lines, I am writing, trips to IKEA to dream about future renovations are one of our favorite weekend activities. Bonus, Swedish meatballs. Because we always have to eat while we're there. They have really cheap food. Good cheap food. And they have vegetarian options, which is important for our family. And I marked with permanent marker on my mat because it's just that kind of a day. A day when you tear things apart and the paper rips, and a day when you can't cut a picture straight and all of that kind of thing. Sometimes we have those days, and it's all right. It's going to get worse. Plus, before any of this started, I had major technical problems. I basically had to spend an hour fixing some problems with, basically, my computer is not advanced enough to handle the video requests that I have of it. And so, yeah, I had to do a lot of things in order to do this video today. So I took out my foodie stamps. That's just the category that I have in my Razzcog. And I picked out a bunch of, I have several different foodie stamps. And I picked out this one by Kelly Perky. It's called, if you're interested, I don't think you can buy it anymore, but it's called Bon Appetit. And this Yum Yum stamp is one of my favorites. As you can see, it's very well loved with lots of layers of ink that can't come off of it anymore because I've used Stays On, and I've used that gold stuff that also doesn't come off. And I don't know where I'm at right now. Oh, I went to, sorry, I left that in. I went to wet my stamp chamois. So I want this down and over to the left-hand side because I want to do 2 of them side by side. I usually stack them, and it wasn't until after I stamped it out that I realized that it actually looks kind of weird stamping yum yum beside each other because it looks like yummy yum. Like, yeah, anyhow, maybe if I had given myself a bit more space, I didn't have that much space. Anyhow, it is what it is. It says yum yum. And if you can't figure that out, well, that's all right. So putting my stamps back and putting my mini Misty back, and I'd like to do something in the top. So I grabbed these. This is my little basket where I keep some roller date stamps and fake roller date stamps. So these little Studio Calico stamp sets look a lot like roller date stamps, but this time I'm actually going to use an actual roller date stamp. This is my Studio Calico. It's from many, many years ago. At one point, it was probably one of the most popular roller date stamps out there. Lots of YouTubers were using it, and it was certainly my favorite for a while, but I haven't used it for a while, so I pulled it out again. And what I love about it is that it actually goes up to 2023. Which is fantastic because a lot of my roller date stamps have run out of time. And so I just don't use the year for those. I still use the roller date stamps. So I, of course, stamped that upside down because that's just the kind of day this is. So it says February 18th, 2020, but it is indeed upside down. But I just left it. Once I stamped it once upside down, I just thought, I'm going to go with it and just stamp them all upside down just to make it look like, I don't know, one of those kind of casual, officey, done on purpose type of design elements. It's totally not what it was, but we'll go with it. My journaling says, lately we've been eating natural peanut butter. This is the only peanut butter I ate growing up. Dad would be proud. I didn't like it when I was a child, but I like it now that I'm an adult. I actually did like it as a child. I didn't love it. I kind of wished that we had normal peanut butter. My dad was a health food person, and way back before it was popular to be a health food junkie, like he was in the 80s, getting weird food and bringing it home for us to eat. So I'm just trimming down some of those labels, and this is my card that's going to be about the Procreate activity that my kids are doing before bed. Not every single night, just some of the nights. I want to matte this photo. It felt like it was feeling a little weird on that background paper. I love that card. Really love it. I love how bright it is with the pink and white dots, but it just felt like the photo needed something to frame it out. So I just took a card there, as you saw, and trimmed it down so that it's a matte. And now I'm going to layer these 2 labels. I was having a bit of trouble deciding whether I was going to layer them overlapping with the photo or leave a bit of space like that with the photo. It's a photo of a clip art that they just put on my device to inspire them, to teach them how to do hair. And so, as you can see, I decided to keep them separate. Played around with it a little bit, and look at how nicely those dots frame out that photo. It looks like one of those mirrors with lights around it. Now here in this card I'm writing choosing healthier activities before bed, because it says focusing on above it. And then I think I clicked off both today, this week, and this year, like all 3 of the options. Then in these labels I wrote, the girls are both learning to draw using Procreate on my iPad. And this is the evening routine. Like, it's not every single night, but most evenings, instead of being on their phones for the last part of the night, they flip over and do some artwork instead of social media and all that kind of stuff. So here I am just taking a moment to look through my stamps. Usually I look through my stamps at the very beginning of my process. And then I have it in mind as I'm designing. I know what images and phrases I have pulled out, but this time I didn't do that, and I felt like I'm hardly using any stamps so far, and I really love stamping on my pocket pages, so I decided to just take a look at my stamps and pull out a couple. So I'm looking at all of my stamps, and oops, also I have been trying to use these 2 small sets as well. And then I pulled out these, which there's like a nighttime and a daytime. So I just looked it up, and they're by Hero Arts, and I don't know the names of them. I think one might be called Rise and Shine, and the other one might be called Evening Routine or something like that. And I decided to use this one that says Evening Routine. And I'm going to stamp that on the blue card that says Focusing On. And here's another mistake I'm going to make. So I am going to put it right there. And I can't decide, am I going to put it right there and use gold embossing powder or white embossing powder? And so I decide on gold embossing powder because there's already plenty of white on there. So I thought I'm going to use gold embossing powder. That's what I've decided. Gold. So I use my powder tool and I stamp it in VersaFine ink, and then I proceed to put white embossing powder on it and emboss it and realize, that's not gold. That's white. I don't even know why I did that. So anyhow, it's white and it looks good. It's fine. That is the theme for this layout. Everything is fine. I meant to do that. That's the other theme of this layout. So while I have my stamps out, I would love to do some stamping right here in the little negative space beside Liv's legs. And this is why it's nice to have somebody a little bit off center. She's quite centered, but it looks quite nice if you frame up your subjects so that they're off centered. It usually gives you a nice place to put some stamping or a little image or something. I noticed that I had this travel set and I really love it, and I don't know where it's from. It does not have a company on it, so it could be Studio Calico because I think theirs don't have anything on it. I know Kelly Perky ones do. It could also be Scraptastic. Anyhow, I really adore that stamp set. It's all travel, but it's a smaller travel set than some of the other things that I have. So I pulled out 2 stamps from there. One of them says Around Town and the other one says Explore, and that's exactly what they were doing. They were exploring around town. So I wanted to just see how these would layer with one another, so I just sacrificed this Good Things Ahead card. It would be the other side of it that I would use if I were to use that card. I like how that looks. They layer quite nicely, so I'm going to go ahead and put that on there. I'm using my VersaFine Black Onyx ink for Around Town, and it's stamped perfectly just with one go, so that was good. I do have my Misty tool, so I could easily double stamp it if I needed to. And now I'm going to use my Chili Pepper Lawn Fawn ink, which is what I've pulled out for my red stamping before when I used that Studio Calico roller date stamp to put a red date on another card. I like to use the same color of ink throughout one single spread. For the most part, it gives me that repetition that I look for, that gives a page some balance. And so it actually took an awful long time for me to do the first page of this spread, longer than usual. And even after taking out a lot of the technical problems that I ran into, still even just the straight scrapping time was longer than usual for a half a page. But this is the way it is. I was looking through some of my stash, and I have some unkitted kits that accumulated while I wasn't scrapbooking last year. And that Kelly Perky set about restaurants, I think it's called Eating Out, yeah, was in there. And I kind of wished I had used that on the restaurant, those 3 cards that go together where my daughter went to a restaurant, but I didn't. What I'm doing here is I'm taking some white gesso. It's golden gesso. I love it because it's really, really smooth. It's particularly easy to draw and write on. I want to do some journaling all the way around this heart, but I felt like the striping was too harsh and would interfere with the readability of such journaling. So I'm just taking a very flat brush and I am dabbing on some gesso, and then I'm just pulling to feather it out to blend it in a little bit with the card, and just providing myself with a little bit of white space. And you can still see the stripes through the gesso, which I also really like, but it just whitens it enough for me to have some space to do some journaling. Now I'm going to let that dry, and then I'm going to go back. I'm pulling out this card because of that Kelly Perky stamp set that I found after I'd already finished this card, and I thought I would squeeze this stamp. It says "A Favorite Restaurant," and it's very applicable, and there was a little space at the bottom of the card, so I thought I would just stamp it there. And that just finishes off that card quite nicely. Until the very, very end, I do have one tiny thing to add to it, but that can wait. And then the other thing that I thought was that I would put the word Procreate on this card in these letter stickers. These are Pink Fresh Studio letter stickers. They came in a Hip Kit Club documenting pocket page kit, and they were from September, October, I think, of 2018. Ask me how I remember that. I actually know that for a specific reason that I can talk about later. Yeah, so that's like way too up at the top, and that would be way too down at the bottom. So this is the Goldilocks spot right here. It's just right, except it's not actually just right. It's still too far up to the top. But I think I'm going to leave it for now, or am I? Nope, I'm going to scooch these letters down even more, which makes them go straight across the actual image. But that's okay. My kids didn't draw that image, so I don't really care if I cover it up. And I think it looks kind of cool going right across the image like that. Of course, this video, you can barely see the image. It's like a sketch of basically a head of hair without a head. There's just like the structure of the head, like a circle there. So back onto this card, which is now dry. It doesn't take too long for gesso to dry. That's another thing that I really love about it. So it's ready for my journaling. I'm using my Zig pen. What is this again? It's not a Zig pen. It's a Tombow Mono Twin pen. And what am I writing? I am writing, Sophie used my card making supplies to make candy holding Valentines for her friends. I had to do 4 in the number because I was running out of space. I like how that looks quite a lot. I'm pleased with that. And it turned out easily without me making any mistakes or needing to redo anything. So hooray. I really like the pattern behind this black and white photo here. I like that that pattern has pink and also gray in it. It really kind of pulls in the black and white from the photo. My only regret is that I didn't print the photo a little bit smaller so that I could see more of that pattern. I finally just decided to stop putting back this ink because I keep using it. This is again that chili pepper red ink from Lawn Fawn. I stamped the date and upside down again because I just thought it's upside down on the other side, so let's just go with it. So it says February 13th, which was of course the day before Valentine's Day. She was in the dining room with my craft supplies making some goodies for her friends, and her sister helped her out. So I labeled those 2 Felicity Jane labels, and now I'm actually going to pop this up, but before I do so, I'm going to stamp on it. There's a stamp here in this Studio Calico set that says working on, and I thought that that was appropriate, so I'm going to stamp that in black. I love those little fake roller date stamps. They're just stamps, and I like them. They're easy to use. So easy to use. Just grabbed a pop dot or 2. It looks like I grabbed 2 there, and layering that. I don't pop everything in my project life. I actually pop dot very little, and I'm just going to staple this. I want the staples to go the same way, so I had to kind of be creative with how I did that. But I pop dot every once in a while, particularly when I've got like 3 label stickers all in a very kind of predictable way there, how it's all staggered. I just decided to pop dot one to add a bit of interest to that. Now here's this card on which I'm going to do some journaling about the 2 letters that are over beside it. And I'm going to overlap a stamp from the Kelly Perky. I think it's the Kelly Perky, the student set. Yep, it is called Life Lessons by Kelly Perky. And I'm taking the stamp that says A Love of Learning. And I'm just layering that with the phrases that were already on there, which said, my heart is so happy. And then I also noticed this ruler stamp that I also want to use. So I put it on there, but I can't decide what color. I want something kind of like craft colored. So I took this, this ink, and I can't remember what it's called. It is called Pizza Crust. What a delicious name. Lawn Fawn does a great job naming their colors. So I just put that ruler across the bottom. I thought it looked pretty cool that way. And it kind of ties into my school theme that I've got going on. And now my journaling says, course selection for high school already. Letters of recommendation for academic math and grade 11 biology. Although now when I look at it, those aren't the two things that are there. It's just the one for academic math. Oh well. Anyhow. She got the recommendation letter for grade 11 biology. I just didn't print it up. Maybe I didn't take a picture of it. I was trying to snap pictures of the course selection process, but she didn't want to have anything to do with that. So this is the best I could do for documenting this. So now I wasn't sure what to do on this blue kind of open space that I specifically put there so that it would pick up on the blue on the other side. So I didn't want to cover it up all the way, but I decided, since I'm also trying to use up lots of these tickets and chipboard pieces before my next kits come, that I would just stack a whole bunch of these embellishments all together and call it a day. So I like how that red label sticker really helps the You Got This to stand out a little bit. I'm also going to outline it so it stands out even more. And then I felt like this one was lacking a little bit of color, especially in the upper layers. So I decided to layer this label sticker right on top of the ticket so that it looks like it's part of the ticket, not like it's two things layered on top of each other like all the rest of the things will look. And then I'm layering those chipboard pieces. One of them says high five, and then the other one says let's do this. And I stapled some of those pieces together just so that they'd be easier to manipulate. And then I wanted to use this last red label as an anchoring piece to just kind of have it all be anchored to the blue card. Just like so. And there you have it. I'll just trim that off. And it's pretty much ready. I do have some final details to add at the very end of my process, but it's ready-ish, ready enough. Basically, what I want to do here is, before I move on to the next card, is I want each piece to be good enough so that if I were to finish now, it would be fine. And then if I have time to do more embellishing, I'll do more embellishing, but if I don't, I won't. So you see I'm just layering these. Another pop dot there. Again, I don't use them that liberally in my project life, but I seem to be using them pretty liberally today. So I did decide to change this one. It felt like I just didn't like those white bands very much on that card. So I decided to mat my photo with a part of this other card and maybe try to still use that. And then I serendipitously noticed that I really liked the striping on the background of that card, like on the back side of that card when I trimmed off those little strips. And I thought that they would be perfect to add to this card just to frame in the second side of that 4x6 card there. And it gives me some repetition of the pattern, and I just like how that frames it all up and makes that card look a little bit more finished off. Now back to my problem of this one, which is not liking how it's turning out, and just messing around a little bit with what my options are here. I put this down and then I decide, nope, not gonna like that. So I decided to put it on this card instead, which is giving me a bit of a cool tone-on-tone pink look, but it means that I want to bring in some embellishments that have some different colors. So I picked that really bright blue label. It's not exactly the same bright blue that I was trying to match with that cardstock, but it shows up in other places on the page, so I'm happy about that. And it is quite a bright blue. I'm just going to layer it with this ticket here. All of those tickets came as die cut pieces in a Studio Calico kit. And this says Begin Again, and then I also have Perfect. Those are from Ellie Studio, as is the blue label. And so definitely mixing lots of, Studio Calico and Ellie Studio stuff together. My journaling here says baby guppies move into adult tank when new babies arrived. The grammar isn't proper on that, but it occurred to me as I was writing it that it sounds hypothetical, like it didn't happen. So the last word I put in past tense just to make it clear that it actually happened. We moved the babies this week into the adult tank, and they so far have not been eaten up. They're big enough now. So this is a picture of my morning coffee, and I thought that these Hero Art stamps for morning might be good to use for this. And then I also thought that this Kelly Perky coffee stamp set, which is called Daily Cup. But I'm ultimately going to decide to use this one that says Early Bird. Gonna make another mistake here, of course, because it's just a mistakey kind of day. Here I go. Why am I doing this? Trying to place this based on how big the stamp is, and I should have just stamped it and then placed it. So anyhow, it's fine because I've made this mistake before with these labels, and so I know that I can just place it a little bit further so that my new label is going to cover up. Now here I lost my stamp. I literally lost it. Like, I can't find Early Bird anywhere. And if you had a really keen eye, look at me looking for it. I actually had to turn off the camera and spend time, and I actually went back and rewound the video footage. Didn't rewind it, it's digital, but anyhow, I looked at it and was able to find that it had stuck to one of the stamp things. Found it. There you go. I thought I was losing my mind there. I was like, see, it was right attached to those other Ellie Studio stamps. Oh, thank goodness for recording everything you do, huh? So I am going to cut this so that it fits in my MISTI. I do have the bigger MISTI tool, but it is already set up with another project that I'm in the middle of, so I didn't want to take all those stamps off of it. So I'm just going to cut these labels. It's fine. And that didn't stamp very well at all with StazOn. I wasn't sure if I needed a slick surface ink. And then when I double stamped it, the thing moved and it didn't stamp right, even though I'm using a stamp positioner, which is supposed to keep that from happening, but human error. So now I'm going to use my VersaFine because it's juicy and I'm pretty sure it's gonna stick and not smear. So there we go. It's stamped in one try, so I don't even have to try it again. Those labels are super, super thin, and so it's easy for them to shift. You just gotta be careful of that. Now I'm going to place this one right over the other one that I ripped. And now the word Early Bird actually fits, and I like how it looks there. So now I wasn't sure what I was going to do about this. I wanted it to be, see, that's too many lines. I like all the pattern on this one. And it's a nice subtle pattern. It's a card that wasn't in either of the kits. It came from my stash when I had the camera not rolling, when I had some technical difficulties. Now I also have this set of I think it's called Titles Volume 3. They're stamps from Ellie Studio, called Title Builder Volume 3. And I decided to call this Shine Bright because it is about my new light, sort of. I just took a selfie with my light in the background. I was up super early narrating at like 5 o'clock in the morning or 5:30 a.m. I just took a picture. I was just looking for an excuse to take a picture of my new light. So I'm using this Brilliance Gold ink that I've used on other spreads, and this is the only place this ink is showing up, but that's okay. There are plenty of golden tones elsewhere on this page. That other yellow that shows up in a couple of labels is also a very golden mustardy looking yellow. So I stamped it a couple of times I find that with that ink, the more layers you get, the more metallic it looks. If you only stamp one or two stamps, it only looks just basically yellow. So I stamped it over and over again. I love how these layer with each other. Look at that title. Oh, it looks like someone with actual design and typography skills made that. That's what I love about this stamp set. It's actually my first time using it, but I think it's going to be great for making easy titles like this. I'm thinking about running this through my brother's Scan and Cut, but my thinking process here is that because it's gold metallic, I'm not sure that the word shine is going to pick up very well. So far, I've only used my brother's Scan and Cut on very dark black images, at least with a dark black outline. I do use it for colored images, but they always have a very specific and bold black outline on them. And I just wasn't sure, and I wouldn't want to have to stamp this all over again. What with my luck that I've been having on this page, didn't want to tempt the gods. So I decided to hand cut it, as you saw there. And now I'm just going to play around with placement because I can't really decide on what I want to do with it. I really like it, but I don't know. I wish that it just covered the whole page. That other pattern is way too bright and loud, but I just wish that this was a solid card instead of having that strip at the bottom of it. So many cards have that strip, and I just don't like it. Anyhow, I kind of like that. And it fits quite nicely with my photo, so I'll take advantage of the fact that that title is almost the same width as my photo by centering everything. I'm just using my grid mat, my work mat, to help me center the photo, and then I can pretty easily center the title on the photo once the photo's on the card. And that's about it for that, although I want to do a little bit of journaling. So it says, I'm writing out new light fixture and then from IKEA. But I put them too close together so I wouldn't be able to cut them out easily, so I spread them out on the other side. And I was going to put 83 flowers or 84 flowers. I can't remember how many there were, but it was a lot. I had to put them all on by hand, and I was on a ladder the whole time I was doing it, and it wasn't fun. But I decided I'd just leave that story for my own memory and just document this. So, new light fixture from IKEA. Goes right there. Now I'm almost done. My idea for this card is that I'm going to leave it pretty plain, but just do some sewing on it. And of course my sewing machine messed up on the first try, but yeah, you know, that's just the day it's been, so you'll get to see that. I did forget to plug in my machine before I turned on the camera, so sorry about that, but I have to figure out a better angle for filming my sewing machine. My hand gets in the way when I do it at this angle. I think I need to be up a little bit more and pointing downwards, so I'll work on getting something sorted out soon for that. Because see how my hand just kind of and my arm also just kind of covers it? That's like kind of defeats the purpose of setting up my camera on a secondary angle, but you can see what I'm doing. Basically, I am sewing through the very bottom parts of the words, and then I'm going a little bit further on some of them just to give it a bit of a messy look. At first I had my sewing machine set to zigzag, and then I also had it set too tight, and so anyhow, all the other ones look better than the first one does, but that's okay. It looks kind of casual and handmade because it's not perfect. I'm just going to trim down on the side and on the backs, but I'm going to leave the little threads hanging on the front side because I like the little bit of whimsy and messiness that adds, and with white thread it doesn't add a whole lot of impact. I wasn't exactly sure what I was going to do with this card, but I ended up finding this butterfly and putting it on there, and it's fine. That's a Maggie Holmes butterfly. It's my last one. So hooray for throwing out the packaging of using up the last of an embellishment. That's always a good feeling when you use something up. Now I need to I was thinking, I know that a Studio Calico kit has come with some cork embellishments, and I was just looking for them. They weren't where I was expecting them to be. I gave up looking for them and pulled out my embellishment drawer, and lo and behold, there were the Studio Calico pieces of cork right where I didn't think they would be. So I have asterisks and I have stars, and I've decided to use stars on this page, and I'm just going to spread them all over the page. And what I really love about these embellishments is that they're very bold. They look quite different than anything else on the page because they have this black paint around the outside edges, or dye, or I don't know what the black is from, if it's like the cutting process or what, but they have this beautiful black outline around them on the border, like on the edge that is cut, is what I'm trying to say. I wish there were more of the small stars. That's my only beef with this package of stars. There really should have been more small ones, but we're gonna make it work. So this adding this one to the photo gives me a triplet up there, which looks nice. I'm also going to put one in the white space of that card, which otherwise is pretty simple. And that basically gives me that repetition and pulls the page together and adds quite a bit of boldness to some of the otherwise kind of bland. Right here I've got some white space that it fills up, and here it just gives, like, especially putting stars all around something like this, like it goes around the photo, really adds a dynamic energy to a photo. So stars are very energizing, I find. I like them in active layouts. So there we go. I use some Tombow Mono multi-adhesive, and those cork pieces, if you use them, they're quite absorbent. What am I trying to say? They're porous. That's what I'm trying to say. And so they do suck up the glue. So you need to use a little bit more than the glue that you would use for something like wood veneer or something. So now you'll get to see a couple of photos, the overall layout. This is how it ended up turning out. I'm really pleased with this one. I love the bold, bright colors. I love the blue and red, how dominant those are in this page. And now you'll just get to see a couple of close-ups. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you have a really great scrappy week.